The chandeliers glistened like frozen stars above Julian Vance's marble foyer. Dozens of event staff moved like clockwork through the estate, fluffing centerpieces, aligning crystal glasses, and silencing imperfections. Everything had to be perfect. He demanded it. Julian stood near the grand staircase, adjusting his cufflinks in the hallway mirror. Armani tuxedo, silver tie, smile rehearsed. Behind him, his wedding planner whispered confirmations into a headset while a distant string quartet rehearsed Chopin. From the outside, Julian Vance was the picture of elegance, successful, poised, and unbothered. But inside, he hadn't slept. Not really. He'd had that dream again. The same one. Rain hammering on a rooftop. Her voice screaming his name. Blood. On hospital tiles. A door slamming. Then silence. He blinked the memory away. Not today. Not again. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and like, spread the word, and tell us where you're watching from. His bride-to-be, Camilla Renwick, was everything the papers wanted: young, glamorous, heir to a luxury cosmetics empire. A union made for headlines. Cameras would be everywhere. He'd even approved a feature spread with Vanity Fair. Legacy mattered. To Julian now, how he was seen, how he would be remembered. And yet, in all that precision and glitter, one envelope was never addressed. One name was never printed on ivory paper. Elena. She wasn't supposed to matter anymore. Across the city, in a small, dim apartment above a laundromat, a woman stirred tea in a chipped mug. She didn't flinch when the wedding announcement came. On TV, Julian's face filled the screen, grinning, radiant, unburdened. Elena didn't cry. That part of her had died years ago. She simply watched. Unblinking, the camera panned across the estate's garden. White roses, silk tents, champagne towers. She recognized the driveway. She remembered that driveway. It was where he'd kissed her belly once, when everything still meant something. Now? He was erasing her. She turned the volume up and whispered, "You forgot one thing, Julian." "I remember everything." Back at the estate, Julian turned as his best man entered with 2 glasses of whiskey. "Cold feet?" he asked. Julian chuckled a little too sharply. "Just thinking about Elena?" Julian didn't answer. His friend raised a brow. "You didn't send her an invite, right?" Julian's jaw clenched. "There's nothing to invite." He sipped his drink and turned toward the window, where storm clouds gathered in the distance. "She's done. That part of my life is finished." But outside, in the growing wind, something shifted. Somewhere between denial and dread, Julian felt it, that crawling chill in his gut. Like a ghost had walked through him. And far from the glimmering mansion, Elena pressed a red envelope to her lips, the last letter he ever wrote her, before tossing it into the fire. The flames caught quickly. So did her decision. Tomorrow, she would rent a limo. Tomorrow, she would bring the past to his wedding. And tomorrow, Julian Vance would finally have to see what he left behind. 5 years earlier, the night she told him. The rain came down like punishment. Elena had rehearsed the words all day. She paced the penthouse in silence, one hand pressed over her belly, the other clenched around the stick with the 2 faint pink lines. The clock ticked past midnight when Julian finally walked in, dry, indifferent, agitated by a dinner that had run long. "I need to talk to you," she said, softly. Julian tossed his keys onto the marble counter. "If it's about the decorator." "Again, I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air, still and dangerous. He didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't even blink. Instead, he poured himself a glass of bourbon. "You're sure?" "Yes." Her voice broke slightly. "Julian, this matters. We matter." He sipped the drink, looked out the window. The city blinked below them like a constellation of strangers. He said nothing, and in that silence, something inside her cracked. 2 days later, he was gone. No note. No call. His phone line went dead. His assistant offered only corporate apologies. The penthouse lease was canceled. The number on the ultrasound photo no longer worked. She searched hospitals, lawyers, even mutual friends, but Julian Vance had vanished as if he never existed. And with him, so did her world. Her savings ran dry within months. The firm she once modeled for dropped her quietly. Pregnancy didn't pair well with luxury branding. Elena tried to freelance, sell jewelry, even apply for government assistance, but something always got in the way. A clause, a frozen account, A rejection she couldn't trace, but she knew. Julian was pulling strings from somewhere that he didn't just leave her. He made sure the world did too. She delivered alone in a government hospital, screaming through labor without epidurals, staring at a flickering ceiling light as her body gave birth to 2 boys. They didn't cry right away. She remembered the panic, the silence, the nurse's hush. Then, 2 cries, seconds apart. She named them Noah and Ezra, after her grandfather's poems, and promised them a life better than her own. But promises don't fill stomachs. For years, she drifted through low-rent apartments, barely surviving. She kept the boys out of daycare and worked nights cleaning offices. Every corner of her life smelled like bleach and sleep deprivation. She never told the twins about him, only that their father was far away. Sometimes, she whispered his name in her sleep, not in longing, in disbelief, in pain that had calcified into resolve. And on their 5th birthday, as the boys made a wish over a single candle in a borrowed kitchen, Elena saw something in Noah's smile. Julian's mouth. Julian's eyes, and just like that, the wound opened again. She stared at the burning wax, unblinking. He thinks they don't exist. He thinks I don't exist. She stood, walked to the drawer, and pulled out the old photo. Her and Julian at the gala, him beaming in a white tux, her hand just starting to touch her stomach. Below it, she found the last envelope he ever sent her. Cold legal jargon, wrapped in roses. That night, she didn't cry. She packed a small suitcase. She chose her red dress. She kissed her sons goodnight. And before she turned off the lights, she whispered, "Tomorrow, you'll meet your father." The apartment still smelled like boiled rice and detergent when the alarm clock blinked 6:00 am. Elena sat at the edge of the narrow bed, staring at the boys as they slept. Noah sprawled diagonally, 1 foot dangling off the side. Ezra curled up tight like a question mark, thumb tucked beneath his chin. Light from the street lamp filtered in through the broken blinds, brushing across their faces, 2 halves of the same whole. She reached over and touched their hair, soft, thick, wild like his used to be. For 5 years, she had protected them from everything, especially the truth. They asked once, "Where's Daddy?" And she had answered with a sad smile and a lie. "He died before you were born, but he would have loved you." Now, that lie would crack open. She stood and moved silently to the closet, careful not to wake them. Her hand hovered over a faded sweatshirt, then slid past it to the back, where the red dress waited. It wasn't fancy, but it had presence. It was the one she wore to the gala the night he kissed her in public and told the press she was everything. The same night he promised forever. She laid it on the bed, then went to wake the twins. "Noah," she whispered, brushing his cheek. "Ezra." Noah blinked awake, grinning. "Is it Saturday?" "No, baby. It's Thursday." "Then why do you look like a movie star?" Ezra's sleepy voice cut through, his big eyes narrowing with suspicion. "Because we're going on a little trip," she said, crouching down between them. "Just the 3 of us." "Where?" Noah asked, already half out of bed, grabbing his toy car. "Somewhere important." Ezra sat up slowly, studying her face. "Are we meeting someone?" She hesitated, then offered a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Yes." She dressed them carefully, matching navy suits from a thrift store, ironed with love. Noah kept talking, filling the room with excitement. He asked if there'd be cake, if they'd see horses, if maybe the man we're meeting has toys. Ezra said nothing. Outside, the city was already moving. Honking cars, barking dogs, shouts from the bodega downstairs. But at exactly 8:45 a.m., a long black limo pulled up to the curb like a creature out of a dream. The driver stepped out, confused, scanning the cracked sidewalks before spotting her in the doorway. Elena tightened her grip on the boy's hands. They descended the steps in silence. Noah ran his hand across the limo door. "Is this ours?" "Just for today," she said. As they slid into the leather interior, Ezra leaned in close and whispered, "Mom, I feel funny." She looked at him, touched his face. "That's just your heart, baby. It knows what's coming." The city blurred past the tinted windows as the boys peered out at the unfamiliar skyline. Elena didn't look out. She stared ahead, eyes fixed, spine straight, hands folded. The past was behind them. What waited ahead was reckoning. That as the limo turned toward the upscale neighborhoods, Elena reached into her purse and pulled out 2 envelopes. birth certificates. Signed. Stamped. Undeniable. She placed them gently on her lap and whispered, more to herself than anyone else. He doesn't get to pretend anymore. The boys sat quietly, their heads resting on her shoulders, and as the estate gates came into view through the windshield, tall and iron-wrought like prison bars, Elena closed her eyes. It had begun. The estate shimmered in the noon sun, a portrait of luxury dressed in floral arches and crisp white tents. Paparazzi clustered behind velvet ropes near the grand entrance, camera flashes firing like nervous heartbeats. Laughter floated on champagne bubbles. Designer heels clicked against marble steps. The Vance Renwick wedding was poised to be the society event of the season. Perfect, curated, untouchable. Julian adjusted his cufflinks again, this time more forcefully. Something itched beneath his skin. A low hum in the air. Camilla, radiant in her ivory gown, was finishing hair touch-ups near the garden terrace. She waved to guests. Photographers snapped away. She looked like a dream. Then came the shift. A black stretch limo, long, silent, out of place, crept up the curved driveway. It didn't belong. It wasn't part of the plan. Heads turned. Conversations paused. The string quartet lost rhythm. For half a beat, Julian's eyes narrowed. The limo slowed to a halt, directly beneath the massive floral arch framing the entrance. The chauffeur stepped out, tense, confused, and opened the rear door. From the dark interior emerged a woman. In a red dress, classic and unmissable, Elena. And then, the twins' .2 boys, in matching navy suits, stepped out beside her, blinking at the sunlight. Holding tightly to either of her hands, a stunned murmur rippled through the crowd like a dropped glass shattering on marble. Julian didn't breathe. Camilla leaned toward her maid of honor. Who is that? No one answered. Elena walked slowly but without hesitation. Her heels clicked against the polished stone. The twins followed, clutching her fingers. Noah beamed at the grandeur. Ezra looked around with quiet awe. Elena's eyes locked on Julian's. She didn't smile. Julian took one step back. No, he muttered under his breath. She wouldn't. But she had. Security hesitated, uncertain. The wedding planner frantically checked the guest list. Cameras kept clicking, capturing every second. The whispers grew louder. Is that Julian's ex-wife? Are those his kids? Why wasn't she invited? Oh my God. The dress. Look at her face. Camilla stepped closer to Julian, her perfectly glossed lips parted. You said she moved overseas, she said, voice low and sharp. Julian didn't respond. His jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists at his sides. Elena reached the end of the carpet and stopped. She looked around, calmly, then leaned down and whispered something to the twins. They nodded. Ezra gripped her arm tighter. The cameras caught it all. From the second-floor balcony, a drone camera panned directly over them. The bride, the groom, and the woman in red with the two little shadows beside her. Julian turned sharply to his assistant. Get her out of here. Quietly. But before anyone could move, Elena raised her hand and waved softly at the crowd. Not dramatic. Not angry. Just present, claiming space she'd been denied. And in that single, poised gesture, the lie began to collapse. Camilla's expression shifted. Her gaze moved from Julian to the boys and back again. Elena turned, took the twins by the hand, and calmly walked into the crowd. She hadn't come to beg or fight. She had simply come to exist, in full view, where secrets couldn't hide. And behind her, Julian Vance felt the air leave the world he'd built. The garden was quieter now. Guests sipped champagne cautiously, casting glances toward the house. The twins chased each other near the fountain, their laughter echoing in the stone courtyard like echoes from another life. Inside the East Wing Conservatory, the air was thick with heat and roses. Julian slammed the door behind him. What the hell are you doing here? He hissed, stepping toward Elena. She stood near the window, framed in sun. Calm, composed, in control. Let the boys play, she said coolly. They've never seen a garden like this. Julian's face darkened. They shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be here. She turned slowly, meeting his eyes. Funny. That's exactly what I thought when you left. He paced like a trapped animal, jaw tight, hands flexing at his sides. You blindsided me. On my wedding day you vanished, she cut in. 5 years ago. No goodbye, no money, no call, just a contract. Do you even remember what it said? Everything was handled legally. They're your sons. She pulled 2 folded documents from her purse. Noah, Ezra, you signed their birth certificates. Julian took them, scanned the names, the dates. The signature at the bottom, his own, from that rushed afternoon at the firm, when he still thought she'd go away quietly, he threw the papers down. You're bluffing. You always were dramatic. Elena stepped closer, voice low and sharp. You left me to deliver twins in a public hospital. I cleaned offices while you bought vineyards. You've lived like they don't exist. But now you're cornered. He leaned in. Do not threaten me. I'm not threatening you, she whispered. I'm giving you options. His eyes narrowed. What do you want? Money? I'll wire you something to disappear again. You're good at that. She smiled bitterly. You're confusing me with yourself. A long silence fell. Outside, the boys laughed again. A high, pure sound. Julian looked toward the window. They don't even look like me. Noah has your crooked smile. Ezra has your silence. They were yours before your name meant something. He turned away, fists clenched. Camilla doesn't know. She thinks you were just a phase. A mistake. Then she deserves the truth, Elena said. Because if I walk out that door, I talk to reporters. And you know what they love more than a wedding story? A scandal. Julian spun around, voice rising. You're blackmailing me. She didn't flinch. I'm giving you a chance to be a father before the world finds out you chose to be a coward. The door creaked open. Ezra peeked in, his eyes wide. Mama. Elena turned instantly soft. Yes, baby. We found turtles in the pond. Come see. She crouched and kissed his forehead. I'll be right there. Ezra hesitated, then looked at Julian. Are you the man on the wall? Julian froze. Elena rose, took her purse, and said, They've only seen your face in magazines. She walked past him, heels echoing against the tile. But today, she added, pausing at the door, they'll remember your voice. Julian stood alone, surrounded by roses that suddenly smelled like rot. That he had power. Yes, but now he also had exposure. And exposure was dangerous. It was raining the day he disappeared. Not a thunderstorm, just steady, cold sheets that turned the city into a blur. Elena sat at the cafe near Julian's office, one hand on her swollen stomach, the other wrapped tightly around a mug of untouched tea. She was 7 months pregnant, alone, but hopeful. He'd texted, Meet me. We need to talk. She had clung to those 5 words like a lifeline. When he finally arrived, he didn't kiss her, didn't touch her, just nodded to the man beside him, older, suited, with a thin briefcase and eyes like fogged glass. Elena, Julian said, sliding into the seat across from her. This is Mitchell. He handles all my legal documents. Her chest tightened. Legal? Julian didn't blink. We need clarity. Boundaries. This doesn't have to be messy. She shook her head slowly. Messy? We're having twins, Julian. There's no spreadsheet for this. The lawyer opened the case, removed a thick packet, and placed it gently on the table between them. Non-disclosure agreement. She stared at the bold black letters, unable to breathe. Julian leaned forward, voice gentle but hollow. This protects everyone. It ensures privacy. For the boys, too. But why would I sign something like this? She whispered. We're not enemies. He softened his tone. Too soft. Like velvet wrapped around steel. You're emotional right now. But you'll see. It's cleaner. This way. No media mess. No gossip. She ran her fingers across the paper. Pages and pages of legalese. Her name. His name. Clauses she didn't understand. The lawyer slid a pen toward her. It's standard, he said flatly. No child support stipulations. No claim to assets. It ensures complete confidentiality and releases Mr. Vance from paternity-related obligations. Her hand trembled. So this says you're not responsible for them. Julian didn't look away. I'll always care for you. But I can't be tied down. And if I don't sign? His expression hardened just enough to chill her. You won't win, Elena, he said quietly. Not in court. Not with my lawyers. And certainly not against my name. She blinked fast, heart pounding in her ears. The twins kicked, a soft thud against her ribs, as if protesting from inside her. You said you loved me, she whispered. He stood. I said what I needed to say. The rain tapped harder on the cafe windows. She didn't sign right away. She went home and sat in silence, staring at the document for hours. She reread it, over and over, but the words didn't get kinder. She called one lawyer, then another. Both refused to get involved. It's his team, one finally admitted. They control too much. By midnight, she returned to the cafe and handed Mitchell the signed form. She didn't cry. Not there. Not in front of them. Julian barely looked at her. He simply nodded and walked away. That was the last time she saw him. Until today, she remembered it all, vividly, as she watched her boys run barefoot through the wedding garden lawn, their shoes kicked off, their giggles echoing across manicured hedges. She had signed that paper with the ink of a broken heart. But today, she carried more than memory. She carried proof. And she carried fire. Julian's patience had snapped by the time the twins reached the dessert table and the photographers started asking who they belonged to. He knew something had to be done, and fast. He pulled his assistant aside near the side corridor behind the wine cellar. "Get her out of here," he muttered. Discreetly. No drama. But the assistant hesitated. "She's got the kids with her. People are watching." "I don't care," Julian snapped. "Call legal. Offer her a settlement. Again, whatever it takes." Unseen by them, just around the archway, someone else was listening. A groomsman, alone with a glass of scotch and a cigarette he never got. Around to lighting, Liam Hart. Julian hadn't even noticed him on the list when Camilla added him. They weren't close. Hadn't been since the early days, back when Julian and Elena had hosted dinner parties in their tiny loft, long before fortunes and fountains and betrayal. Liam had been Elena's friend first, and now, ears pricked and brows furrowed, he was recording. His phone stayed low, screen dimmed, voice memo running. "I want her gone," Julian continued. "I don't care how. Make her sign something else if you have to. She's not ruining this day for me." "You're on camera, sir," the assistant whispered urgently. "There are drones. Guests. The press." Julian waved him off. "They'll be distracted when the string quartet starts again. Just move quickly, before she opens her mouth to the wrong person." He stormed off toward the ballroom. Liam stepped back into the shadows, his heart hammering. It wasn't just the callousness. It was the certainty in Julian's voice. This was routine. Like buying silence was as easy as buying champagne. That he pulled up the recording and saved it twice. Once to the cloud. Then he glanced through the French doors toward the lawn. Elena stood by the koi pond, watching the boys toss petals into the water. Her dress swayed gently in the breeze. Her face was unreadable, but Liam saw the quiet tension in her shoulders. A woman bracing herself. He walked toward her. "Elena," he said softly. She turned, startled at first. Then her face softened. "Liam, it's been a long time," he said. "But I remember." He glanced at the twins, then back to her. "You look like someone who's tired of being quiet." She hesitated. "You were always the only one who noticed." He reached into his jacket pocket and handed her his phone. "Press play," he said. She did. And as Julian's voice filled the speakers, clipped, venomous, undeniable, Elena's eyes widened, then narrowed. Proof. Real, irrefutable, on-the-record proof. She handed the phone back, her voice low. "Why are you helping me?" Liam shrugged. "Because he made a mistake. And because I remember who you were before he erased you." From the ballroom, applause erupted. The first dance was beginning. Julian held Camilla like nothing had happened. But, "Elena?" She smiled now. Not out of joy. Out of knowing. She had a new card to play. And Julian Vance had finally made a mistake he couldn't buy his way out of. The ballroom glittered under 1,000 crystal lights. Julian and Camilla swayed gently. In the center of the polished floor, bathed in the warm gold of the spotlight. The band played something classical and slow, a curated moment of grace, beauty, and wealth. Elena stood just outside the archway, holding her son's hands. "Noah," she whispered, crouching down. "Go give him the card you made." Ezra hesitated, eyes wide. "Are we allowed?" "Just walk to him. That's all," she said, her voice calm but charged. Noah grinned, pulling his paper from his pocket. A folded square with red crayon hearts and a messy stick figure family. Elena stood back as they walked together, two small boys in matching navy suits moving across the glossy ballroom floor like they didn't know they were disrupting a dynasty. But they did, and that innocence was their shield. Whispers trailed behind them. Heads turned. Conversations broke mid-sentence. Julian's back was still to them. Camilla saw them first, her brow furrowed slightly. Smile tightening, hands pausing mid-dance. Then the music stopped. Noah tugged at Julian's pant leg. Hi. Julian turned, saw them, and froze. The kind of freeze that begins in the stomach and radiates outward, into the spine, the fingertips, the expression. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Noah lifted the card. I made this for you. It's us. Ezra stood half a step behind his brother, fingers fidgeting. Camilla looked from the boys to Julian, to the flash of recognition on his face. Something inside her unraveled. Daddy? Noah asked, looking up. The word cracked through the ballroom like a lightning strike in silence. Julian's hand twitched. Guests gasped. Phones rose, almost instinctively. Some mouths opened. No one spoke. Camilla stepped back. Just once. Elena walked forward, slow and measured, stopping just beside the scene she'd orchestrated. She didn't say a word, didn't need to. Her sons had already done the speaking. Julian crouched quickly, one hand on Noah's shoulder. No, buddy. That's not. He looked around, voice tight. Where's your mom? Noah pointed. There. All eyes turned. Elena stood tall, chin raised, face calm. In her eyes was no fury, no pain, only presence. Only truth. That Camilla's lips parted, her painted perfection faltering. Julian, what is this? Julian stood. It's not what it looks like. Camilla didn't blink. Then what is it? He looked to the boys, to the card, to Elena, and back to the crowd now buzzing with scandal and breathless fascination. Noah handed him the card. Julian didn't take it. The rejection hung in the air. Ezra stepped in front of his brother. We don't need you to keep it. Then he took Noah's hand, and they turned and walked away, tiny back straight, silent, brave. Julian stood there, a statue in his own wedding. Camilla stared at him like she was seeing a stranger. One of the violinists dropped her bow. And Elena? She turned, gathered her sons, and walked toward the garden exit. She didn't gloat. She didn't look back. She simply let the moment bloom into what it was always meant to be, a reckoning. Behind her, the applause didn't return. Only the murmurs did. And Julian Vance, father of two, couldn't stop them now. Camilla hadn't moved in over 5 minutes. She stood in the corner of the ballroom, the hem of her gown brushing the floor like it belonged to someone else. The crowd had scattered into hushed groups. The music still hadn't resumed, and Julian was nowhere to be seen. She held her phone in one hand, her eyes scanning the screen with surgical focus. The NDA. The offshore transfer. The quiet restraining. Order filed and sealed. 4 years ago, every document was there, sent anonymously to her private email moments after the boys walked away. She didn't need a return address. She already knew who had sent it. The truth wasn't a hammer. It was a scalpel, and Elena had cut with precision. Across the room, Julian finally emerged, adjusting his cuffs like that alone could restore dignity. Camilla, he said, voice low. Can we talk? Somewhere quiet. She didn't move. Instead, she turned the screen to him. You forged a financial release from a pregnant woman? He froze mid-step. I didn't forge anything. It was illegal. You silenced her. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to slice the air. You paid her off, buried court records, and pretended she, and those children, didn't exist. Guests turned again. Phones lifted again. Camilla, this isn't the place. No, she said. It's the perfect place. Because this is where you told the world you loved me. So tell them who you really are. Julian stepped forward, jaw tightening. You don't understand the full story. She tilted her head. Then explain why you took out a restraining order against the mother of your children while she was recovering from childbirth. He didn't answer. Cameras clicked, a murmur grew. Camilla kept going. You built your empire on your image, Julian. Clean, charitable, loyal. But this, she gestured toward the air between them. This isn't a scandal. It's a pattern. Julian's voice snapped. You're being hysterical. And in that single moment, every woman in the room heard it. Camilla's face went blank. Then, you just called me hysterical while standing on the ashes of your lie. Julian reached for her wrist. She pulled away, and someone, no one knew who, gasped. Then came the click of a video recording beginning. The press, huddled just outside the velvet ropes, surged forward. Julian backed away. Camilla lifted the train of her gown and walked past him. She didn't storm. She glided. Out the side door, past the confused guests, past the flowers and the fanfare, past everything she thought this day was supposed to be. She paused only once, in the garden, where Elena now sat with her sons beneath a tall oak tree. Their eyes, no words were exchanged, but something passed between them, woman to woman, truth to truth, not forgiveness, not friendship, just understanding. Camilla turned and disappeared into the shadows of the estate, veil trailing like smoke. And Julian? He stood in the middle of a ballroom that now felt far too quiet, far too wide, with only the sound of breaking glass in the distance. He had not just lost control, he had lost the narrative. Julian was gone, and no goodbye. No press statement, no speech. To save face. One moment, he was standing near the bar with his tie loosened and eyes darting. The next, vanished. No one saw him leave, but the valet later swore he bolted down the back corridor, slipped into a black SUV, and disappeared through the service gate like a man fleeing a crime scene. The champagne ran flat. The band packed up early. Guests quietly filed out, unsure whether to be embarrassed or entertained. The Vance Renwick wedding trended by midnight, not for the dress, or the celebrity chef, or the venue, but for her, Elena, and the boys. Clips of the twins stepping forward went viral before the first dance video could. Hashtag father of two, hashtag the wedding scandal, hashtag who is Elena Vance. The headlines didn't ask if the story was true. They assumed it was. Elena didn't need to defend herself. The silence did it for her. She sat on a stone bench beneath the oak tree as the last flickers of golden light disappeared behind the estate walls. The boys leaned against her thighs, sleepy now. Their navy jackets were dusty, their matching ties crooked. "Mom?" Noah asked softly. Was that really him? Elena looked down. His eyes were so bright, so open, still untouched by how complicated the world could be. "Yes," she whispered. That was him. Ezra yawned. He didn't say sorry. "No," she said, brushing his hair from his forehead. "Some people don't know how." They were quiet after that. A cool breeze moved through the hedges. Somewhere nearby, a lone champagne flute rolled off a table and shattered. The final punctuation on the day. Elena stood and took their hands. "We should go," she said. They walked slowly across the now empty reception lawn. No cameras followed. No one dared approach her now. She passed the marble fountain, where years ago, Julian had once kissed her neck and whispered about forever. She passed the floral arch, once built for his wedding, now half wilted and crooked like it had bowed to the truth, and she walked through the same gates she entered that morning. Only now, Julian was the one in hiding. He had once made her disappear. Now, it was his legacy unraveling, not hers. 6 months later, the cameras were back. Only, this time, they weren't pointed at flower arches or champagne towers. They were aimed at a courthouse. Julian Vance, once dubbed the untouchable face of modern real estate, stood trial for fraud, coercive control, and willful child abandonment. The charges were stacked like bricks, not because of one catastrophic act, but because of years of carefully hidden ones. The courtroom was full. Journalists, legal analysts, a public starved for consequence. But Elena wasn't here for spectacle. She sat behind the witness stand in a gray dress, simple and unflinching. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup, no jewelry, just presence. The prosecution's voice was steady. "Can you confirm that the man seated at the defendant's table is Julian Vance?" She looked across the courtroom. For a moment, neither flinched. "Yes," she said. "That's him." "Did Mr. Vance provide financial or emotional support to his children after learning of your pregnancy?" "No." "Did he attempt to suppress the existence of those children?" "Yes." She answered each question clearly, plainly. No anger, no embellishment. The defense tried to rattle her. Asked about her financial status, her mental health, her intentions, but she didn't flinch. Then came the recording. Liam, the groomsman, stood and played it aloud. Julian's voice, cold and calculating. "Offer her a settlement. Again, just get her out of here." The courtroom held its breath. Julian didn't look up. When the judge called recess, Elena returned to her seat. She felt no triumph, only gravity. The courtroom wasn't revenge. It was released. It was the official undoing of silence. The air was crisp and bright. the kind of early spring morning that made the sky feel new. Elena stepped out of her apartment and smoothed the fabric of her red dress, the same one she'd worn to Julian's wedding. But today, it meant something different. There was no tension in her shoulders, no fire simmering in her chest. Just quiet, just breath, just stillness. The boys ran ahead, laughing, carrying helium balloons and chocolate-stained gift bags. They were 6 now, taller, louder, braver. Noah had lost a tooth last week. Ezra had taken to writing stories with stick figures and crooked words. Elena walked behind them, her heels soft against the gravel path of the city park. The sun filtered through budding branches, dappling her dress in warm light. The trial had ended 2 months ago. Julian was found guilty on 2 charges, enough to fracture his empire, enough to strip the shine from his name. The rest would come, in time, civil suits, custody motions, statements from other women. But Elena didn't follow the headlines anymore. She didn't need justice to be loud. She just needed to be free. "Mom!" Noah shouted from ahead. "Look, a turtle!" Elena smiled and hurried her pace. They stopped at the edge of the pond. Ezra crouched low, pointing at the slow-moving shell near the reeds. "He's not in a rush," he said thoughtfully. "Maybe," Elena said, kneeling beside him. "He knows there's no need to run when no one's chasing you anymore." They sat for a while, watching ripples dance across the water. The balloons bobbed gently behind them in the breeze that a nearby woman complimented her dress. Elena nodded, hand resting on her lap. "It's an old one," she said, "but it fits differently now." The woman smiled and walked on. Elena turned back to her boys. "Ready for cake? Chocolate?" Noah asked. "Always," she grinned. They stood and walked together, 3 shadows stretching long and steady down the path at an O. Cameras. No whispers. No wait. Just a mother in red, walking toward whatever came next. This time, not to be seen, but to live.